Thank you for joining us for Meet the Candidate. I'm Annie Taylor, and joining me to talk more about her run for Greenville Mayor is Elizabeth Liles, or Liz Liles, as she goes by. And Liz, it is amazing to see that you're running because you have such a heart for the community. So congratulations on looking forward to serving in a higher capacity here in the city of Greenville. Let's talk about the reason why you decided to run.
Absolutely. So I ended up in this space just from seeing the level of need in our community and really believing that the voices of the people should be leading the work and driving the decisions that we are making as a city and as a community. I believe that every single person not only needs an invitation into the room, but needs to have a seat at the table where their voice can be heard and decisions can be made that represent all people. And so I have a heart to make certain that every person is represented and that we are doing the work as a city and as a community to ensure that we are making the marks and the progress to ensure that every person has the opportunity to succeed and thrive and provide the best for themselves and their family unit.
Well, what's interesting, this is your first time running for any office, and you decide I'm going to go straight for mayor, but that's not because you're not a great leader. Obviously, you have founded and you are the executive director for an organization that many people have heard of, which is Daughters of Worth. And you created that to help young women just know their worth here in our area. Talk about that mission to go forward and start this organization and how it's just grown and flourished since.
Absolutely. So I began the organization in 2015. I wholeheartedly believe that when you are presented in a space in life where you see a need or a gap in service, that basically we have an opportunity. We can either pretend that that need does not exist and turn our head and ignore it, or we can do something to rise up and bring change and to advocate for a better tomorrow for people. And so I ended up founding Daughters of Worth in 2015 based on the needs that I was seeing of these young ladies, needing to really know their worth, but also to have a safe place, a safe haven, and to have support and wraparound services. So it began with only 12 girls in 2015, funded the organization out of my own pocket for the first 3 years, and just volunteered while I served another organization full time. And it has just grown and evolved over the last 7 years. Today we have presence in counties throughout eastern North Carolina and serving approximately about 400 girls collectively through our different programs that are offered.
Wow, from 12 to 400.
Yes.
That's amazing. And these women, and they are young women too. It's not just, we're talking school age young girls, like even elementary school age, all the way up until adulthood.
Absolutely.
And so when you think about that and the challenges, those are the kinds of things I'm sure you saw firsthand. What are some of those experiences that, if you can speak about, that brought you to the place where I need to make change and create change in this city?
I love that question. So when we began serving our 18-year-olds and older, that happened a couple of years ago, right as the pandemic was beginning to hit and really consume our community. We had several young ladies who were getting ready to graduate, and up until that point, we had stopped our services at age 18, but these young ladies did not have that support, did not have that family, and really asked, is this something that we can continue in the organization and receiving that support? And so I reached out to all the girls who were in that age range and asked them if they were interested. And within moments, they all came back and said yes. And part of our work with Daughters of Worth has been, we tell our girls every single day that you can create the tomorrow of your dreams by making positive, healthy, intentional decisions today. There's a place that happens between when you are exiting childhood and you enter that age of 18 and older, and you do that with no family support. You're doing that without having training or additional education skills, when you don't have those connections or life support that a lot of us have. The barriers that are in play for these young ladies to be able to generate sustainability and independence are really insurmountable. And so as you're walking alongside of these girls and their families, you're seeing and experiencing what family units as a whole are having to endure. issues of safe and affordable housing and transportation and reentry opportunities and all of these different pieces, you really understand how difficult it is to be able to pull yourself up and to be able to develop this successful life. And so they have really kind of given me a crash course, I guess you can say. And so as I have been walking alongside of them and trying to figure out the resources, the connection, the support, and as I'm running into those barriers, as I'm seeing all of those challenges and having to spend sometimes hours upon hours on a day making phone calls, you realize that this is not just a specific situation over here. This is happening to a group of people collectively that really need to have a voice in our community, and how we can better advocate to ensure that these people have got what they need to be successful.
That's interesting because, like you said, you actually had to go through the process with these young women. And when you're talking about affordable housing, what did you find and learn in the city, especially, that made it even more difficult for them?
So it has safe and affordable housing is something that we just see as a huge issue that is here. And anyone, especially from the service provider space, when you are trying to find a place with someone who has a limited income. And just so that we're kind of working from the same terminology, what that term actually means is about 30% of your income. So we are not supposed to be spending, more than 30% of your actual income on housing. But when you have limited opportunities for employment, you have a limited wage, and then there's a limited space here for housing, it makes it really difficult. So a couple of things that I have learned along this journey is that it's next to impossible to find something that's really safe and affordable for these girls and these families to be able to move into, that's going to put them in a good position. You're also looking for spaces that are along the bus route, the bus line, which all plays into, again, that part of success and empowerment for them to be able to generate the life that they desire for themselves. And I think that we probably have all recognized that we are saturated in student living here.
I was going to say, there are apartments everywhere.
There are.
Everywhere. You turn.
And it's interesting because if you actually follow the council meetings and you look back at the decisions that have been made, 5 years ago, they actually brought in a consultant and they did a study to assess sort of our supply and demand of student living space. And it was determined at that time that we were already saturated in student living. There was not a need to continue to develop and to build, yet decisions continue to be made to continue building these structures. In fact, December of 2021, the North Carolina Human Relations Council just placed out a new study and kind of assessing and identifying needs of affordable housing throughout the state. And it was identified that Pitt County has a need for 75% increase in safe and affordable housing to best meet the needs of the people who are here.
That's interesting that you say that. 75% is a high number.
It is a very high number.
So that means people are struggling.
100%.
And if they don't find just quality housing, do you feel like they are ending up in places where they're not safe? Especially in your line of work, you were seeing these young women, they could find something affordable, but they may be in a place where it wasn't the safest.
100%. So you're finding, of course, we have even with the Housing Authority, there is a very long list. It's about a 3-year waiting list is the last that I have heard from that area. So as you're trying to get on that list and move through that space, it's difficult. And also if you have, prior charges, if you have prior evictions, those are things that are going to also hinder you. So if you fell into financial hardship, years before, that's something that's going to have to be resolved in order to move forward and to receive that support. And then just not having space that's here. I mean, as we're seeing with our housing market.
Right.
The housing industry has just skyrocketed. So, as we are trying to, for those who may be interested in home ownership, it's even more difficult now to find a space and that's affordable. And then we're also watching that rent continue to increase as well. So there's just so many different barriers that are coming into play that really pushes people into a space of what do you do next and where do you live.
Right. And the one thing that you mentioned too, getting to places. especially with the transportation. A lot of things may be central to the city, but even there are parts of Greenville that are a little further out, not as close to services, though it seems to be there's a bus route. But what have you found when just talking with the young ladies and just, going through your organization and trying to help these young women get to either jobs or healthcare, social services, and they just don't have, one, the transportation they can afford, and then, gosh, they're still talking about gas prices, to maintain that vehicle, and then you're still trying to get to point A to point B, and you may have to call it Uber, and then those prices. So
yes.
Yeah, it seems like there's just so much when it comes to that.
And I think from the outside looking in, it's easy for us to say, oh, well, you can just take the bus. And that's initially what I thought years ago, until I began working with these young ladies and trying to help them track to figure out. So you've got a very specific line for where that bus is going to maneuver. You have to be on that route in order to have access to that. You also have to walk to that bus stop. So for example, we have one young lady that in order for her to get to her job, it's an hour walk from the space that she is currently living to get to that bus stop. She has also shared that there are times that there are bus driver shortages. And she may not make it on time, or they may come late, and then she often has to be on the bus for up to an hour in order to get to her destination. So for example, if you're trying to get to work at a certain time, it may take you 2 additional hours prior to that just to get to the stop, waiting for your driver, and then getting to your location. And then for those who may have to, who are employed at a space that they are working either before the bus routes are running or after they stop, then they're forced to have to figure that piece out. So then you look at the Uber options, and I think that it's important to look at that and understand that in order to just get to one location, you very well may be paying $30 or $40 just to get from one location to another. So if you're looking at that,
and you have to do that 5 days a week,
and you're having to do that 5 days a week on minimum wage, and you're trying to make your rent, and you're trying to put food on the table, and all of those different things, it really makes it difficult just to be able to live and to exist.
It almost creates this cycle of poverty.
It does.
Because you have found and seen that people want to work. Obviously, they want to be able to support themselves. They get the jobs that are available, which is also very interesting that there are jobs. Even in this area, there was a study that ECU did, and they were saying that we are seeing historic highs when it comes to open jobs in this area. And I know that happened after COVID, but no workers. People are not wanting to go back out and be in the system to work. So as mayor, what do you think you could do? What plans could you make to help people get back into the workplace?
So I think there's a couple of things we have to look at holistically when we're talking about this space and why people are not there. And I think you've had a number of people who were right on the cusp of retirement, but wanted to hang on for a little bit longer. And then as we had the pandemic come through and they began to assess their health, their family, their quality of life, some of those individuals just chose to go ahead and exit out a little bit earlier than maybe they had anticipated. So that was something that was kind of already in play, but may have just kind of provided some extra incentive to go ahead and retire a little bit earlier. You also have, and I think we've all seen this, of course, I mean, who has not been in 10,000 Zoom meetings?
Oh my gosh. Like this month, maybe?
Right,
yeah.
So we have seen the industry change. We have watched as there have been new openings and opportunities for people to be able to work from home. And so businesses, companies that previously maybe had not been open to that began to realize, look, we can create this whole new space, bring on employees, they can actually work from their home, from their space of choice, and we can have the same amount of productivity. So just because we're not seeing those people physically in those locations does not necessarily mean that they are not working. That just may mean that they are not visible to your eye and may have found ways and spaces to produce income that just look a little bit different than what we have seen before. But I believe that in order, but yes, we are seeing definitely a shortage, and we need for people who are seeking for employment opportunities, and our small business owners, our companies, to also have the people there to be able to produce that end result. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. Part of this, I believe in the power of collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we have to have clear communication, we have to have authentic leadership, and we have to be willing to work together for the end result for all people. So I think part of that is having roundtable discussions and understanding the needs of the small business owners, who they're looking for, what they are looking for, being able to work with service providers directly, building a collaborative that can allow us to be able to draw from the pool that we know who are actively seeking employment. And then helping to remove those barriers, the things we have just talked about. So, for example, if you do not have a safe and affordable space to live, if you're couch hopping from place to place because you're trying to figure out where your next meal is going to come from, some of those needs have to be addressed first in order to get people back to work. We also have to maneuver around the mobility piece. We have to make certain that people can get back and forth to work. I can go get a job, but if I don't have the way to sustain that by getting to work on time or having a way that I can get back home at the end of my shift, it's not going to be sustainable.
Right.
So we have to work around those pieces. The other thing is childcare. We have to also realize how many mothers are being positioned right now in spaces where childcare is expensive. There's not enough funding that's available. You have another 3-year waiting list or 4-year waiting list just to receive that assistance from that end. So I think a lot of this is working collaboratively with our small business owners, finding out what those needs are, working directly with the people who are working with these individuals who need jobs, and then figuring out how we can come together as a city to support those entities, to essentially support those individuals, that we're all working in unity with the same motive, the same motivation, and the same method of being able to get people back to work.
Yeah, and I think too, we look at not just what is here, but broadening what the industries that we're seeing. We all know this is a education city. We understand the hospital is a big sector. We have manufacturing companies. But as we're seeing things change, are there others, like other industries that you would like to see come into Greenville and maybe change the landscape a little bit of the workforce?
So I have two responses to that. I believe in allowing the voices of the people to lead the work and drive the decisions. And I think part of that needs to come. We have seen where there has been some pushback as some industries were being worked on, being brought in, but that was not done in necessarily a transparent way. And so there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of conversation happening and meetings happening behind closed doors that not everybody was involved in. So I think that this is a community conversation that as we are looking at the industries that we desire to have here in our city, it needs to be a community conversation. And as an elected official, it's our job to represent the voice of the people. So those voices of what the people want to be here should be the decisions that we are making to best support that. The second piece of this is also making certain that we're providing equal opportunities across the playing field. When we have funding that is available for specific districts to produce, to support business owners, small business owners, entrepreneurs who are wanting to bring those new developments, we need to make certain that those individuals have that access to that resource, to that knowledge, to that training, and know the steps that they can take to be able to do that. So part of this initiative is also in making certain that people are aware of what resources that the city has so that we can best support those endeavors.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you're mentioning that, talking to the people, asking them what they want in this area and not being told this is what we're going to do. But there's a lot of potential. We're seeing the growth. We've seen it probably in the past decade, just how Greenville has grown. But then there's the rural side, where we've had our beginnings farming community. Pitt County, of course, is, the tobacco, county. But we've seen that transition. And some people don't want to see a big congested city. You'll have some who will go, I don't want us to be Raleigh, where it's gridlock and, people in and out. How do you think we can balance that where we're not becoming, or do you think we will eventually become a city where it's just like Raleigh? It's a growing, booming, and, busy place. Do you feel like we were going to get to that point?
I think you have probably heard me say more than once that I am not an if or kind of girl. I'm a both and kind of girl. I believe that development is necessary. I believe that we want to grow and develop and be lively and be marketable. We want to be attractive to larger industries. We also want to do that with integrity. We have a Horizons land use policy plan that was put in place. And what that plan does is it looks at the big vision, the big picture of how our community decided that it wanted to look and some of the assets we wanted to have. We wanted to have a walkable city. We wanted to make certain that we were preserving beautiful open spaces. We wanted to make certain that our land use was done in a way that not only brought some of these larger businesses and supporting small businesses, but it also made certain that we were not developing areas that were good for the family unit. That we wanted to have beautiful, friendly, green open spaces that can provide that opportunity for all people to come together. And so I think we can do both. I think part of that is in evaluating that Horizon land use policy. What we are seeing is that some of the decisions that are being made and have been made over the last several years do not reflect what we stated that we wanted, and is really in contradiction to that plan. So for example, one of the things that I am passionate about is making certain that we are not developing land or developing property that is prone to flooding. We need to make certain that we're making good decisions, that we are not putting marginalized people in further risk by those decisions. We need to be intentional about where we are building things. If it's going to increase traffic into a space that's going to affect the quality of life of our individuals, that's not going to be a good situation. So again, really coming back to allowing the voices of the people to lead that work, to drive those decisions, and making certain that we are growing in a way that is intentional, that it's healthy, that we are thriving, but we are not profiting one group of people while putting another group at risk.
And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because it is a diverse community, and we're seeing more diversity actually come into Greenville. When you think about it, the university brings a large, amount of different ethnic groups, racial, religious, everyone from different backgrounds. And Greenville has this motto where they talk about, let's find yourself in good company, of course, is the motto. But how do you see that in the light of the things that you have experienced in your nonprofit versus the business sector, those who've been here for a very long time, family, been here, and the inclusion from people who come from the outside?
Yes.
How do you see that as a part of Greenville and the motto that we're in good company?
So I believe that our city has placed some statements that we are have a desire and a goal to be a diverse and open, inclusive city. I think that there have been some situations that have taken place over the last couple of years that have brought some concern. And again, just bringing the voices of the people whom I'm representing all people, there's a lot of work to be done. I feel like that there are people who do not feel safe here. There are people who do not feel welcome, who do not feel included. And as, again, coming back to that both and piece, the end of the day, we are a community. We are a people. The whole One Greenville platform, which is what I have, is the platform that I'm running on, is that we are called to be one another's brothers and sisters. We are called to help one another. We are called to collaborate. We are called to build a city that every single person who comes here is welcome and has a space and has a seat and has a voice, and that we are doing everything we possibly can to rise up for one another. It doesn't mean that you have to put your values down and that you have to agree with everything that another person holds. What it does mean is that we can reach a space of compromise. What it does say is that we may have different views on these things, and I'm not asking you to put your value and your virtue down, and neither am I putting my value and my virtue down. What we are doing is bringing those things to the table and saying, what can we do collectively to come together as a city to make decisions that are going to benefit all people? And at the end of the day, we need someone who's willing to lead that work. And in order to lead that work, you have to be willing to hold those hard conversations. You have to be willing to acknowledge the disparity and the gaps and the needs that are here, and you have to be willing to do the work that is necessary to bring the city to that space, and that's what I bring to the table.
And that brings me to this question, because a lot of times we hear, and like I mentioned, this is your first time running.
Yes.
You know, this is not something that you probably had thought, I just want to be a politician.
No.
So why should people vote for you?
People should vote for me because I'm not here for my platform. I am not here for my gain. I'm not here to endorse my nonprofit organization. I'm not here to add something else to my plate, because I can guarantee you that I've got enough on my plate. I am running for mayor because I believe in the power of the city. I love this city. I love the people who are here. And I wholeheartedly believe that we are called and responsible for making certain that people have the opportunity to have the best quality of life possible. I believe that we need to have leadership that's making decisions that's done in an authentic, transparent nature, that decisions are not held behind closed doors, that decisions are being made that represent the best of all people, and that we are making decisions that are really positioning people in a space where they can create the tomorrow of their dreams. And if we're not doing that work well, if we know that if we have had studies done and research has been offered and data has been given, and we continue to make decisions that are in conflict with that data, then I have questions about the work that's being done. If we have ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, that have been designated by the federal government, that we have been entrusted to use for a specific census tract for a specific purpose, and we are not using those funds wisely and with the integrity and the intention that they were designed to be utilized, $23.5 million coming to our city.
Yes.
If we are not doing those things well, we need someone who's willing to stand and give a voice. We need someone who is willing to serve all people, who is not doing this to advance their own space, but simply my whole heart in this is that if I can serve and be a voice and represent the people, and the lives of people improve across our city, and we are creating a space that everybody has a space at the table and their voice is represented, that's why I'm running.
And of course, you have the passion, you have the drive, you have the stamina of any. I have never seen anyone who can get up in the middle of the night to help a young lady and their family and still be up in the morning for a meeting at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. You're constantly, and balancing all of that, you feel confident that that won't be an issue because you're in this city working. And I know you have to work every, but you're out here working.
I am out here working. You know, I think that's one of the interesting pieces with this is that people see it as an addition to, or they see it as you're doing this thing other than what you're doing on a day-to-day platform. The reality is that this opportunity is simply expanding the work and the level, the capacity that I'm currently serving. I'm already here doing this work. work. I'm just seeking to be able to advocate at a larger capacity and to be able to represent all families and making certain that we're doing this in the best way possible. And it does require hard work. It does require grit and determination, and I'm willing to bring that to the table just as I have done with everything else.
Well, we do wish you the best, Liz, and thank
you
you so much for this conversation, just so we can get to know you a little bit better. But of course, we do encourage people to vote. May 17th is, of course, the primary. But if you want to learn more about Liz, go to LizLilesForGreenville.com. Good luck to you,
Thank you.
and we wish you the best. And thank you for watching.